Find a comfortable place to sit and admire the Second Rock Dam, and we'll get back to the history of Perkins Canyon. As you may recall from our last segment, Doc Powell died in a gun battle.
Poor Doc Powell's daughter came to settle the estate. She sold the land, 160 acres, to Howard, a businessman that was looking for a summer home to ride his horses. Unfortunately, Howard did not want Doc Powell's trained circus horses, and they were sold for the paltry sum of $2.50 each, I suspect to a company named Elmer's. But Howard was here for several years. He built the dam and a horse rink. A man named Ray Blomberg, who was a Swedish immigrant, was exploring the area, and he thought he saw the cinnabar too. So he leased the land from Howard, and he began his mining activities. At that time, Mercury had risen to $100 a flask, so they saw dollar signs. Unfortunately, come October 1929 was a Great Depression. The stock market crashed, and the price of mercury took a nosedive. But they struggled on for a few years in the area. They eventually took on a partner, a man named Eriksson, another Swedish immigrant, and they did some mining. And finally, around 1939, the Bradley Mining Company came in. They associated with Blomberg and Eriksson, and they began mining in earnest. They had opened up two mines. One was the Rhine mine, and one was the Mount Diablo mine. They had both underground mining and surface mining. First, they built a machine to crush the ore. They built a kiln to roast it. And they built a retort with a giant condenser, where they took the vapor, the mercury vapor, and condensed it back into liquid form. It was old Ray Blomberg's job he actually ladled the liquid mercury into the flasks. That was always his job, and he retained it even when they went high-tech. So they were kind of just struggling on still, and then World War II started. And all of a sudden, mercury became very important again. It was used in detonation devices. It was, of course, always had medical uses, most notably for venereal disease, which I guess became a problem again with all the GIs, and also for a non-corrosive paint. They built 12 cabins in the area. They hired 3 shifts of workers. They worked 24 hours a day, 8 hours a shift, worked on Christmas and Thanksgiving.
Victor Blomberg's son, Ray, worked in the mine as a teenager. Here's what he told Anne Homan about what it was like.
He got kind of a kick of some of the older men that were working down there. He liked the jokes that they would tell and the tricks they would play on each other.
Was it dangerous?
It was dangerous. Ray told me that he's never smoked, because if you smoke underground, there could be an explosion. And some of those men would smoke. And he said he was always afraid that something would happen. And one time, there was a confusion about the tram that was filled with rock. He was in the mine, and the tram had been taken up top, but somehow something broke, and the whole tram fell down the shaft. And he was fortunate to be far enough away from it that it didn't hurt him. And then one of the neighbors complained because one of the times they set off an explosion, a piece of tree it came right by his chair. And he came over to the mine carrying this piece of tree and complained.
After World War II, the price of mercury crashed again. Bradley Mining Company stayed on, the Blombergs got out, and so did Eriksson. And in the 1950s, it was finally sold by the Bradley Mining Company. And it went through a number of owners until the 1970s. I'm not sure how much mercury mining was going on. It may have been mostly land speculation. When the land was finally bought by the present owners, the Westman family. And as you drive down Morgan Territory Road, you can see a couple of trucks that are still stuck in the dirt across the road. And Mrs. Westman told me, you know, they always promised me they'd come back and take those. But I suspect they were so happy to unload that land just when our environmental laws were being toughened. They never looked back. Those old rusting hulks are still sitting there. And somewhere in here is the old streetcar of Doc Powell, circus clown, herbalist, and would-be miner.
And how toxic is the site?
It's a big problem. The mercury itself is not the problem. It's when it gets to the surface and it gets worked on by a bacterium, because methylmercury, that it becomes poisonous, and that from there it works its way up the food chain. What happens, it's still leaching out of the old mine sites, and in the winter it washes down into Dunn Creek, which washes into Marsh Creek, which ends up at Marsh Creek Reservoir. Marsh Creek Reservoir was designated as a state recreational body of water for boating and swimming, but with high levels of mercury, it's still off limits to the public.
Local residents, the county, the state, and even the federal government have been wrestling with this problem since the 1970s. Lots of research has been done, and even a little work, but poisons continue to leak into the watershed. In April 2013, the executive officer of the Central Valley Regional Water Quality Control Board ordered a cleanup by the end of 2015. The order listed who should be held responsible, including current landowners and successors to the old mining companies. As we were completing this guide at the end of 2013, that decision was being contested by two parties on the list. A vote of the entire board was slated for February 2014. If you want to head home now, continue along the creek on the single-track trail. It will take you up to a fire road. Turn right at the fire road, walk about 50 yards, and then turn left on the meadow trail, the same trail you came in on. If, on the other hand, you'd like to try an easy side trip up to the slopes of North Peak, turn left when you get to the fire road and listen to segment 9.1. On your way back to your car, listen to segment 10. That's where we conclude the story of the 2013 fire.